Howdy folks, this is Big Sam. Welcome back to the Mosin Museum. Today we're going to be answering a question that I get from a lot of viewers, and even still probably more folks have this question that just don't ask it. I'm assuming it's quite a lot of people. The question is this: Big Sam, I've heard that Finnish Mosins are generally a lot nicer than your run-of-the-mill Mosin, and I'm looking to get my first one, but where do I start? How do I know what to look for? What kind of a model should I get? What even is a Finnish Mosin? Which is probably, we could do a whole separate dissertation just on that, because there's a lot of confusion there. We're going to try to make this video on the shorter side if we can. Essentially what we're trying to do today is give a good and relatively succinct answer to the question of which Finnish Mosin should you buy as your first Finnish Mosin. And if you don't want to watch the whole video, the answer is the M39. But it's not just because of one or two reasons. There's actually many good reasons why this should be your first Finnish Mosin. Now there's a couple caveats. This is not, in my opinion, the greatest Finnish Mosin, although some will disagree with that. This is also not even my favorite Finnish Mosin, but this is probably the best all-around Finnish Mosin by far, and it makes a lot of sense to get into if you're really just, starting out. So the M39 is pretty easy to identify. It's got this semi-pistol grip here in the stock. This is always the thing you look for. Now, there are actually a few early M39s made in 1941 that don't have this. I don't actually recommend getting one of those as your first one, because on those, a lot of the value is actually in the stock, and if you crack it, you're going to kind of hurt the gun's overall appeal. So you don't necessarily want to shoot it that much. So if you're looking for an M39 for your first one, look for the one that's got this semi-pistol grip here. Now, Finland produced these rifles from 1941 up until 1945, and a couple of different arsenals. You could find, if you look on the barrel markings, you'll see the Sacco gear on some of them, and you'll also see some with a VKT marking. Both are about roughly, as collectible, give or take. A lot of that comes down to personal preference, although some of the years can get really specific, but just generally speaking, you're not really going to get too much of an advantage of getting one over the other. Now, some of them, however, are a lot less common. These are marked SKY on the barrel. That's going to be a Civil Guard specific M39. Those do tend to hold a bit of a premium. Now, here in America in 2024, a rifle like the one we're looking at here today, which is produced by Sacco in 1943 in good condition. It doesn't have any, major cracks in the stock or anything like that. Sort of has a nice patina on the rifle overall. Something like this, you're really going to want to be at around $700 to $750, $700 to $750, somewhere in there, if you can. The prices on these can vary a little bit, and sometimes it's really hard to locate one of these in like a brick and mortar store or a pawn shop. So a lot of places like Gunbroker online are your best bet for something like this. So a lot of Finnish Mosins have comparable prices right now, but generally speaking, these are the nicest when it comes to fit and finish. And a lot of the parts on these are just nicer, like the barrel bands, and you can actually get the parts for these. These also tend to be some of the most accurate Finnish Mosins, although I would say the M2830s are more accurate, generally speaking, than these. But, on the spectrum, these are really on the top end of all Mosins in general. These are very accurate. Now, some folks may not realize this, but Finnish Mosins tend to actually be in a different caliber than the standard Mosin. We're all familiar with a 7.62x54 rimmed cartridge. Finland actually generally would chamber their rifles in 7.62x53. Now, we did a whole separate video on this. It's sort of their own custom spin-off of 54R. It's very, very similar. However, the bullet diameter is a little bit smaller on the Finnish round. So the bore diameters on Finnish Mosins in general tend to be a little bit smaller, and that can pose a bit of a problem if you want to shoot modern, like, cartridges, just standard, you know, 54R ammo that you go buy off of the shelf at your local Cabela's or something. The M39s, however, were later, and these were specifically chambered for the D166 projectile, and the bore diameters on these tend to be much, by comparison, larger, although it's really only by a frog's belly hair, but it's just enough to make these guys much better options if you do actually plan on not hand loading for these and just wanted to shoot modern, you know, commercial 54R. That's one of the main reasons I recommend these. So that's a big reason. Again, price is also a big reason. A lot of other Finnish Mosins tend to be, you know, 700 and up, really, depending on what you're looking at. And considering these are some of the nicer ones, you know, it really does appear to be a great buy for the market right now. And what's also great is these aren't, like, super rare. Now, again, you can have difficulty finding some of these in a brick and mortar store, but online, you know, it's very easy to find one of these for sale here in America. And what's also great is if you got an issue with, like, some of the barrel bands, if you need a replacement barrel band or a handguard or even a stock, they're around. You can get parts for these much easier than some other Finnish Mosins like an M91 or an M27. If you got a barrel band that's broken or missing, or a stock that needs replacing, or a handguard, you might be out of luck. Some of those parts are really hard to find, especially the stocks. Another reason these are great entry level, I guess, rifles, although it kind of pains me to say that because these are so much nicer than pretty much all the other Mosins we take a look at here on the channel, and they, again, just tend to shoot really nicely. Not always, but a lot of times they'll have nice triggers. This one in particular has quite a nice two-stage trigger. Everyone's going to be a little bit different that you pick up and handle, but that's another reason. These tend, not always, but they tend to have nicer triggers than other Finnish Mosins. Finnish Mosins in general tend to be all over the place. These ones are a little bit consistently better. If you want to mount a sling on one of these, like say you want to take one of these hunting, you got a lot of options. You got these bottom sling swivels here. You also have a side sling swivel on the back end side here, which is awesome. So it gives you a lot of flexibility. Now when you're looking at these, another thing you want to take a look at here is on the bottom of the stock. These will almost always have two-piece stocks. So you can see these splices right here at the bottom. So with these splices here, you want to actually look at the shape. On this guy, I don't know how well you can see it, but the splices are rounded. Sometimes you'll see them with square splices, and the square splices are post-World War II. So if you could find one with round splices, those tend to be a little bit more collectible, a little bit more desirable. Again, something else you look for. This one's also kind of interesting because it has these like little popsicle joint splices on the side. You don't see that too often. Now, I tend to prefer these rifles with patina, with a lot of finish wear. I just, you know, I really like the charm you get with that, sort of like that battlefield pickup style. Some M39s will look like this with not a lot of finish on them. However, some M39s are actually going to they're going to look like completely new, completely refinished. And again, it kind of comes down to personal preference and also what you want to do with the rifle. If you're planning on actually using this rifle a lot, and you live in more of like a humid environment, like Southeast Texas, the South, you know, Florida, I would actually recommend getting one that's got more finish on it, right? If you get one like this, it's going to be more prone to rust. And while it won't if you take really good care of it, you're going to have to go the extra mile to take care of it if it has less finish on it. Okay, so let's recap. You're looking to buy your first Finnish Mosin. And what I recommend is one of these fantastic M39s. Always check to make sure you're looking at an M39 by checking to see if it has the pistol grip. These do have a very distinctive rear sight, which you can also use to identify them. However, the M2830 rifles will also have this rear sight. They look very different than this rifle. So M39s, if you're looking at a rack of rifles, try to see if any of them have this semi-pistol grip on the stock. That's going to be, again, the easiest way to identify these. And, you know, right around 700 to 750 for a standard, you know, Sacco or VKT produced one. The Civil Guard ones right now, generally around $1,000, give or take. And again, that's going to increase over time. If you're watching this, you know, well after 2024, the prices might have gone up. One other last cool thing is Finland made a lot of the parts, but they didn't make all the parts on these rifles. Finland produced the stocks, the sights, the barrels, brand new barrels, but they did use some leftover parts. These are old, like very, very 100-plus-year-old in a lot of cases, receivers, magazines, and even the bolts are very old. And what's cool is sometimes these receivers can actually be antiques. So if you ever get one of these rifles, one of the first things you want to do after you've had, you know, a gunsmith inspect it and safety check it and everything is, you know, take it out of the stock and check on the underside of this tang, because they'll generally have a date marking, unless it's an American Remington or Westinghouse receiver. Generally, those won't have a ton of markings on them. If it's a Russian receiver, though, it'll usually have a date. And if it's made before 1899, it's considered under federal law in America an antique. Although there's some state laws do tend to vary a little bit. However, the antiques do hold more of a premium. So if you're planning on reselling the rifle at some point down the road, that's another thing you want to check for, because that's going to make it more collectible and more desirable. We could spend a lot more time talking about these rifles, but again, I wanted to try to make this as succinct and informative as possible, so hopefully this helps. If you're really interested in Finnish Mosins, you cannot go wrong with an M39. And then the parts are there, the accuracy is there. It's just a very complete package, and you get a lot for your money, more than pretty much any other Mosin. And it's not even close. One of these guys for $700 in the current market is a pretty good steal, in my opinion, for what you get. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you have more questions, please email us. I always try to put my email in the description of every video. If you want to see closer pictures of the markings, or you just want to see one of these rifles in high resolution, make sure to check out our website at mosinmuseum.com. Let me know if you guys got any prayer requests, and we'll see you next time.